Welcome to Math with Mr. J.
In this video, I'm going to cover how to solve absolute value equations, and this will be kind of like a beginner's guide. We will start with a quick review of absolute value, move to a basic equation, and then go from there. We have two sections. Our first section will have the absolute value isolated on one side of the equation. And then in our second section, this won't be the case. We will have numbers and operations outside of the absolute value. So we'll start pretty basic and work our way to equations that will take more steps to solve. This will give us a solid understanding of absolute value equations. Now remember, the absolute value of a number is its distance from 0. So for a quick review, the absolute value of 5 is 5. So if we take a look at 5 on the number line down here, the distance from 0 is 5 units. The absolute value of -5 is 5 as well. And taking a look at the number line, here's -5. The distance from 0 is also 5 units for -5. Keep in mind, the absolute value of a negative is always going to be positive. It's the distance from 0. So the absolute value of +5 and -5 is 5. Now going off of this, let's jump into number 1 where we have the absolute value of x equals 3. Now the first thing that we want to do is make sure the absolute value is isolated on one side of the equation. If it's not, we need to start there. For these first 3 examples, the absolute value will already be isolated. Now, as far as the absolute value of x, it needs to equal 3. Well, we have 2 possibilities here, 2 solutions. The absolute value of +3 equals 3, and the absolute value of -3 equals 3. Both of those work. So imagine having 3 or -3 here for x. Both of those are solutions. They both equal 3. The absolute value of 3 and the absolute value of -3 equal 3. So when we have an absolute value equation, we write 2 equations, one that is equal to a positive and one that is equal to a negative. This is going to give us 2 solutions. Now there are situations where we will get one solution or no solution. I'll cover those in another video after this intro. So for number 1, x equals 3 or x equals -3. Now we can always check our solutions by plugging them in for the variable. So for example, let's come to the side here. We have the absolute value of 3 equals 3, or the absolute value of -3 equals 3. Well, the absolute value of 3 is 3, and then the absolute value of -3 is 3. So we do have the correct solutions here. Let's move on to number 2 and build off of this. Taking a look at number 2, we have the absolute value of m plus 5 equals 9. Now, our absolute value is isolated here, so we can move on to writing 2 equations. Now, this absolute value equals 9, so we know that m plus 5 needs to equal +9 or -9. The absolute value of 9 or -9 equals 9. So we need 2 equations here. M plus 5 equals 9, or m plus 5 equals -9. Now we solve. Let's start with m plus 5 equals 9. So we need to isolate that variable of m. We are adding 5 to m, so we need to undo that. The inverse operation of addition is subtraction. So let's subtract 5 from the left side of the equation. Whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other. So subtract 5 from the right side as well. Now on the left side, we are adding 5 and subtracting 5. So these 5s cancel each other out. M is now isolated. So M equals, and then on the right side, 9 minus 5 gives us 4. So M equals 4. Or let's solve M plus 5 equals -9 now. So we need to isolate M. Let's subtract 5 from the left side. That means we need to subtract 5 from the right side as well. These 5s cancel each other out. M is now isolated, so we have M equals, and then on the right side, -9 minus 5 gives us -14. So M equals -14. And those are our two solutions. Let's check these solutions by plugging them in for M. So we will start with the absolute value of 4 plus 5 equals 9. And then we have the absolute value of -14 plus 5 equals 9. Let's start with the absolute value of 4 plus 5. Well, 4 plus 5 gives us 9. And the absolute value of 9 is 9. So that is correct. And then as far as -14 plus 5, that gives us -9. So we have the absolute value of -9, and that gives us 9 as well. So we are correct. Those are our two solutions. Lastly, let's move on to number 3. For number 3, we have the absolute value of 4x minus 8 equals 24. Our absolute value is isolated, so now we need to write our two equations. So again, we have the absolute value of 4x minus 8 equals 24. That tells us that 4x minus 8 needs to equal 24 or -24. So let's write these equations here. 4x minus 8 equals 24. Or 4x minus 8 equals -24. And now we can solve. Let's start with 4x minus 8 equals 24. We need to undo the subtraction first. The inverse operation of subtraction is addition. So add 8 to the left side of the equation. That means we need to add 8 to the right side as well. Now on the left side of the equation, these 8s cancel each other out. So we have 4x equals, and then on the right side, 24 plus 8 gives us 32. Now we have 4x equals 32. So 4 times x equals 32. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. So divide the left side by 4. We need to divide the right side by 4 as well. On the left side, these 4s cancel each other out. X is now isolated, so we have x equals, and then on the right side, 32 divided by 4 gives us 8. So x equals 8. Now let's solve 4x minus 8 equals -24. So let's add 8 to the left side of the equation and the right side. These cancel each other out. So we have 4x equals, and then on the right, -24 plus 8 gives us -16. So let's divide the left side by 4 now and the right side. These 4s cancel each other out. So x is now isolated. We have x equals, and then -16 divided by 4 gives us -4. So x equals -4. So those are our two solutions. Let's plug those in to see if we are correct. Let's check those. So we have the absolute value of 4 times 8 minus 8 equals 24. And then we also have the absolute value of 4 times -4 minus 8 equals 24. Let's start with the absolute value of 4 times 8 minus 8. 4 times 8 is 32. So now we have the absolute value of 32 minus 8. 32 minus 8 gives us 24. And the absolute value of 24 is 24. So we are correct there. X equals 8. Now let's do the absolute value of 4 times negative 4 minus 8. 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. So we have the absolute value of negative 16 minus 8. That gives us negative 24. So we have the absolute value of negative 24, which is also 24. So we are correct there as well. X equals negative 4. So those are our two solutions. So there's our first section. Let's move on to our second section, where we will have numbers and operations outside of the absolute value. Here's our second section. Let's jump into number 1, where we have the absolute value of x minus 6 equals 2. Now remember, the first thing that we need to do when we have an absolute value equation is look to see if the absolute value is isolated on one side of the equation. So it needs to be by itself on one side of the equation. In this example, the absolute value is not isolated. It's not by itself. We are subtracting 6 from it. That means we need to start by isolating the absolute value. We need to undo that subtraction. The inverse operation of subtraction is addition, so let's add 6 to the left side of the equation. Whatever we do to one side of an equation, we must do to the other, so add 6 to the right side as well. Taking a look at the left side of the equation, these 6's cancel each other out. So now we have the absolute value of x equals, and then on the right side of the equation, 2 plus 6 gives us 8. So now we have the absolute value of x equals 8. Now keep in mind, we know that the absolute value of positive 8 equals 8, and we know that the absolute value of negative 8 equals 8. So x can be 8 or negative 8. So this is where we write two equations. We have two options here, two scenarios, and that's going to give us two solutions. So x equals 8 or x equals negative 8. Now here for this example, the variable is already isolated. We have x equals 8 or x equals negative 8. So we are done here. These are our two solutions. Now, in our other examples, we will have to go through additional steps in order to isolate the variable. So you'll see what that looks like again as we go through our other examples. Now, once we have our solutions, we can check them by plugging them into the original equation. So let's come to the side here. So we have x equals 8. So plug in 8 for x. So the absolute value of 8 minus 6 equals 2. And then we have x equals negative 8. So the absolute value of negative 8 minus 6 equals 2. So let's start by checking x equals 8. Well, the absolute value of 8 is 8. And then we have 8 minus 6. That does give us 2, so we are correct there. X equals 8. As far as x equals negative 8, the absolute value of negative 8 is 8. So we have 8 minus 6, which again equals 2. So we are correct there as well. X equals negative 8. So our two solutions, 8 and negative 8. Let's move on to number 2. For number 2, we have 2 times the absolute value of g plus 7 equals 20. Is the absolute value isolated? No. So we need to start there. Now, I do want to mention we cannot use the distributive property here with absolute value. Those are not the same as parentheses. So just something to keep in mind. Again, we cannot distribute when it comes to absolute value. We are multiplying the absolute value by 2, so we need to undo that. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. So let's divide the left side by 2. Whatever we do to one side of an equation, we must do to the other. So divide the right side by 2 as well. Now on the left side, these 2's cancel each other out. So we have the absolute value of g plus 7 equals, and then on the right side, 20 divided by 2 gives us 10. So now we have the absolute value of g plus 7 equals 10. The absolute value is now isolated. And now that it is isolated, we know that the absolute value of g plus 7 has to equal 10. This gives us two options, two solutions. G plus 7 can either equal 10 or negative 10 because the absolute value of 10 is 10 and the absolute value of negative 10 is 10. So we need to write two equations. We have g plus 7 equals 10 or g plus 7 equals negative 10. Now we need to solve those to get our solutions. Let's start with g plus 7. So let's isolate that variable of g. So we need to subtract 7 from the left side. That means we need to subtract 7 from the right side. These 7's cancel each other out. G is now isolated, so we have g equals, and then on the right side, 10 minus 7 gives us 3. So g equals 3. Now let's solve g plus 7 equals negative 10. So let's subtract 7 from the left side and the right side. These 7's cancel each other out. So g is now isolated. G equals, and then on the right side, negative 10 minus 7 gives us negative 17. So g equals negative 17. So those are our two solutions. Now let's check those solutions by plugging them in for g and seeing if they work. So we can come to the side here. So we have 2 times the absolute value of 3 plus 7 equals 20. And then 2 times the absolute value of negative 17 plus 7 equals 20. And let's start with 2 times the absolute value of 3 plus 7. 3 plus 7 is 10. So we have 2 times the absolute value of 10. The absolute value of 10 is 10. So now we have 2 times 10, which is 20. So we are correct there. G equals 3. Let's do 2 times the absolute value of negative 17 plus 7 now. Let's start with negative 17 plus 7. That gives us negative 10. So now we have 2 times the absolute value of negative 10. The absolute value of negative 10 is 10. So now we have 2 times 10. 2 times 10 is 20. So we are correct there as well. G equals negative 17. So again, our two solutions here for this example, 3 and negative 17. Let's move on to number 3. Now let's take a look at number 3, where we have 5 times the absolute value of 3x minus 15. Then we end the absolute value plus 4 equals 49. Now the first thing that we need to do when solving an absolute value equation is to isolate the absolute value. We are multiplying that absolute value by 5 and then adding 4. So we need to undo that addition first. The inverse operation of addition is subtraction, so let's subtract 4 from the left side of the equation. That means we need to subtract 4 from the right side as well. These 4's cancel each other out, so now we have 5 times the absolute value of 3x minus 15 equals, and then on the right side, 49 minus 4 gives us 45. And now we have 5 times the absolute value of 3x minus 15 equals 45. So we need to undo the multiplication now. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. So let's divide the left side by 5. That means we need to divide the right side by 5 as well. These 5's cancel each other out. And now we have the absolute value of 3x minus 15 equals, and then on the right side, 45 divided by 5 gives us 9. So now we have the absolute value of 3x minus 15 equals 9. So the absolute value is now isolated. Now we know that the absolute value of 3x minus 15 has to equal 9 or negative 9. The absolute value of 9 equals 9, and the absolute value of negative 9 equals 9. So we need to write two equations. We have 3x minus 15 equals 9, or 3x minus 15 equals negative 9. So let's come to the side here where we have more room and solve these equations. So we have 3x minus 15 equals 9, or 3x minus 15 equals negative 9. Let's start by solving 3x minus 15 equals 9. So we need to undo that subtraction first. Let's add 15 to the left side of the equation and then to the right side as well. These 15's cancel each other out. So we have 3x equals, and then on the right side of the equation, 9 plus 15 gives us 24. So we have 3x equals 24. 3 times x equals 24. Let's isolate the variable of x by dividing the left side of the equation by 3. That means we need to divide the right side by 3 as well. These 3's cancel each other out. X is now isolated, so we have x equals, and then on the right side, 24 divided by 3 gives us 8. So x equals 8. As far as 3x minus 15 equals negative 9, let's undo the subtraction first. So add 15 to the left side of the equation. That means we need to add 15 to the right side as well. These 15's cancel each other out, so we have 3x equals, and then negative 9 plus 15 gives us a positive 6. So now we have 3x equals 6. 3 times x equals 6. Let's isolate x by dividing the left side by 3. That means we need to divide the right side by 3 as well. Taking a look at the left side, these 3's cancel each other out. So we have x equals, and then on the right side of the equation, 6 divided by 3 gives us 2. So we have x equals 2. And those are our two solutions. Now let's check these solutions by plugging them in to the original equation and seeing if they work. Let's start with checking x equals 8. So within the absolute value, we have 3 times 8, which is 24, minus 15. That gives us 9. So we have the absolute value of 9 now. 5 times the absolute value of 9 plus 4. The absolute value of 9 is 9. So we have 5 times 9 plus 4. 5 times 9 plus 4 is 49, so we are correct there. X equals 8. Now let's check x equals 2. So within the absolute value, we have 3 times 2, which is 6, minus 15. That gives us negative 9. So we have 5 times the absolute value of negative 9 plus 4. The absolute value of negative 9 is 9. So we have 5 times 9 plus 4 now. 5 times 9 plus 4 is 49, so we are correct there as well. X equals 2. So those are our two solutions. So there you have it. There's how to solve absolute value equations. I hope that helped. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, peace.